What are we going to eat today?
I'll give you 3 choices. Salad spinner. There are no tires. Oh, jeez.
Oh, 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 oh! Oh, no! You gonna swim with Daddy?
These pools are easy to put up and even easier to take down.
Whoa, Joel! Are you okay?
Hi, my name is Taylor. I'm going to show you how, this is my new floater by Sherry, and I'm going to show you how it works. First, you put it on here, then you press the lock it button, then that, and then it'll fly up in just a second. See? And then,
Oh, no!
I love watching those "Don't do this at home" videos. I was thinking, babe, when I was watching those, we probably could have made up plenty of our own experiences of "Don't try this at home." But here's the deal: today we're kicking off a brand new series, and we're calling it "Try This at Home." And our objective is to try to give you as many tools and resources over the next few weeks of things that you can try to do to build healthy, vibrant homes. So primarily through this series, we're going to focus on families and the family unit, but don't worry, nobody's going to be left out for the series.
And this has relevance to everyone because we have all been impacted by family, even if only by absence. Most of us will also impact others by being either part of or even creating a family.
Yeah.
And all of us can attest to the power of the family unit to either make or break. We're all a product of the environment we grow up in and even surround ourselves with now. So much so that it is hard to know where nurture, the environment, begins and nature, genetics, ends.
That's good. So here's what we do for jumping off today. We're going to talk about the story of Moses. And maybe many of us know the story of Moses. He's this incredible leader. He talked with God like he was a friend. He was extremely instrumental in the miraculous deliverance of an entire nation of people from slavery. But what you may not be familiar with is the dynamics of his family, or I probably should say families of Moses. There's all kinds of takeaways from his beginning, his origins, and how this contributed to him becoming this integral part of one of the most incredible and memorable stories in the Bible. Now, let me say this. There is nothing normal about the story of Moses. Even the story of his birth and the early years, in fact, it begins, you talk about a crazy story, it begins with murder. The Israelites had enjoyed prosperity and favor in Egypt. Some of us know about this, but all of that began to change when the scripture tells in Exodus that there arose a new king over Egypt. And the favor that Joseph had with the Egyptians, it faded. And the Israelites now were turned into slaves. But the oppression continued to worsen when the Egyptians began to fear the Israelites were becoming way too powerful. So much so, this is crazy, that they decided to commit infanticide by casting every Hebrew baby boy into the Nile River. And so the objective of the Pharaoh was to kill all these babies. And that's where we find the birth of Moses. This is the context for it. So as in Exodus chapter 2, verse 1, it says, about this time, a man and woman from the tribe of Levi, they got married. The woman became pregnant. She gave birth to a son. And she saw that he was, and I want you to catch this, we'll come back to this in a second, but she saw that he was a special baby. And she went on and she kept him, and again, take note of this, we'll come back to this, but she kept him hidden for 3 months.
And we really want to begin by focusing on the environment and cultural climate that Moses was born into. You see, it was not safe to be born to Israelite families at this time. His life was in jeopardy as soon as it began. He was destined to die, but the family and, of course, God's plan and purpose spared him. I want to point out that it is not easy to be born even now. It is not
So true.
necessarily safe, but the truth is that there has never been a time when it's been completely safe. Now, the family unit is designed to be protective, to nurture children until they're strong enough to nurture others. But even then, the family is designed to be the support, the lifeline for survival and meeting of needs throughout all stages of life. Unfortunately, we know that from the beginning of time, the brokenness in people produces broken and unfortunately flawed support structures.
That's so true. I was thinking we do enough damage all on our own. But I want to point out that the enemy, he exploits the weaknesses of the family. And I believe personally that just like in those early moments of Moses' life, it's crazy to think that this Pharaoh sends out this edict to destroy all of the children. I believe that today, just as like it was in the time of Moses, there is an all-out attack, a war on the family. Because here's why. If the family fails, we all fail. And so there's an agenda to weaken and destroy. I mean, just look at your Twitter feed, look at your Instagram feed, look at the news today. There is this agenda to weaken and destroy families. But the good thing is, the hope is that the family, even though it's flawed and broken, it's also it's the remedy. And so what we want to show you today is a few ways that Moses' family, in spite of this dangerous time that he's born into, they acted to ensure that his future and his success was intact, and that we can learn from and apply them to our lives as we're building family. So the first point is, number one, I told you we'd come back to this, is the first thing that she did is she hid them. And so according to the book of Hebrews, when you look back at Moses' life, it specifically points out that his parents had discernment to see that Moses, he was beautiful. Hebrews 11:23 says, another way to say it is that he was too precious for them to abandon him to a certain death. One scholar that I was reading suggested that when Moses' parents hid him, that the word here used, it has a way fuller sense of hiding for safekeeping. And usually this word was only used to apply to situations of hiding something of great value, of treasuring away. And so really you could translate it here that she hid him like a treasure, that she kept her little treasure secret. And I think this begins for us with valuing our children by seeing the God-given potential and the promise in them and then acting accordingly. You would never take a haphazard and thoughtless approach to caring for something that you value or treasure. No, a treasure implies that something is of great worth, and not just a worth in the eyes of society, but to the one that possesses that treasure. And this is the way the Bible describes children. It says that they are a gift from God. Now I know, baby, it hasn't always felt that way, right? You think about treasure, you think diamonds. Diamonds are easy, right? They don't talk back. They don't rebel. They don't have the teenage years. They don't have those early years of emotional outbursts. But the truth is that there is nothing, listen to me this morning, there's nothing more precious and valuable than children. And so then the responsibility then that's associated with these treasure, these diamonds, it's weighty, it's heavy.
That's so true. I just am wondering, what would it look like to focus on the worth and value of the treasure given to us instead of maybe grumbling and growing weary because of the work required to cut, refine, and ultimately reveal the treasure so that it can be seen by the world. And it is this treasuring that will motivate and push us to continue the great work entrusted to us, even when we're sleep deprived or it isn't convenient or it costs too much. I just want to encourage us to take time to treasure our family. I do have a personal story. I can recall my children were much younger. It was definitely in those years where it was difficult physically, emotionally, and otherwise. And I was still young myself and growing and maturing in a lot of ways. And I remember kind of going through a season where that treasuring wasn't really there. I was more focused on the demands of what they required and the caring and the demands of life and all of that. And I remember God just arresting my attention one night when they had gone to sleep. And I was finally like, at last they've gone to bed. And I just felt convicted. And I felt God just kind of impress upon me that my children were my garden. And he really challenged me to change my view. And instead of viewing things as difficult or, to being not as patient or as kind with them, to learn to cherish those moments and to nurture and to cultivate the ground and the environment around them and to treat them as if they were precious treasures. And this really also challenged me to gain wisdom to equip myself so that I could be free to enjoy my children, because
so
a lot
good.
of times lacking that wisdom is what kind of gets us into this place of not really being able to enjoy or to treasure our families. So.
Yeah, for Moses' family, I think allowing him to die, that wasn't an option. He was too precious. So they hit him. They're defying this edict. They're placing all of them in great danger. But this was this protective act, and it was carefully planned and designed to increase the chances of his survival. They literally acted to protect. And so it was this bringing together of all the collective wisdom with every member playing their part. You got to go back and read the story. We don't have time to get into it this morning, but his sister and his mother and everybody playing this unique role, all in order to protect. Mm-hmm. And so it was both wise and it was brave. When you were talking about that story about God showing you your children as a garden, this week when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about, our children being like little plants, little seeds. I was thinking about the greenhouse, the structures that enclosed by glass, and they're used for this cultivation or protection of tender plants. And I was thinking that's our homes. They got to be like a greenhouse, a place of protection of these tender plants. And so I want to make a challenge right now. And I want to say is that the good intentions and even our willpower, that's not enough. That wisdom is required. And the plan with Moses would have failed before it even started without wisdom.
Absolutely. And this is part of my journey, part of my quest. I sought to gain wisdom after that kind of realization to care for my garden. It wasn't enough to want to and to be willing to do my best. My best needed to be better. And I'm not suggesting that everyone needs to go out and get a doctoral degree, but what I am suggesting is that we cannot rely on only what we've seen and what we know. This is too important. Our family is too precious. So I want to challenge you. What areas are you needing wisdom in?
That's good.
We would never attempt to work on something priceless or precious or valuable without first seeking instruction, counsel, wisdom. And we all regularly watch how-tos. We Google, we go to YouTube all the time to learn how to do things. I do it regularly. How many how-tos are you seeking out in the care of your family? What instruction have you sought out? What wisdom have you sought out? It regularly astounds me how much time we spend investing in teaching things like mathematics and reading. And I am all for education. I'm really huge on it. But how little practical life instruction is given. And we can't rely on our family systems to do this teaching. Many of our family structures are unfortunately dysfunctional. And this just leads the dysfunction to replicate over time.
Can I just pause you and say that is so true? And I think Verve knows it is our passion to break the dysfunction, to turn the tide of the brokenness. But the deal is that's not easy. Everybody wants to talk about breaking generational curses, right? But very few people want to actually do the hard work of bringing about the change. When I typed in I was thinking about the greenhouse. I literally just typed into my Google search and I said, because I was thinking, I didn't know a lot about that. And I tapped in, what are the disadvantages of the greenhouse? And I want you to see this. I'll have them put them up on the screen here. Here's what they were. Number one is they can be expensive to build. Number two, they're expensive to heat. And number three, they require constant monitoring, maintenance, and care. And I was thinking, wow, that's what it looks like for us to build greenhouses in our home, to break the dysfunctional cycles, to see brokenness repaired. Is, you know what? It's going to cost a lot. It's going to cost a lot to build homes that way. It's going to cost a lot to keep them heated. And it's going to require, it's not just a one-time thing. It's not just a one-time sacrifice. It's not just a few weeks. We're talking about some of the generational cycles that have been passed down for generations. They require a lot of work and ongoing work. And then it's not just like once you get your home, you feel like, oh man, we're making progress, doing well. No, it requires a constant monitoring and maintenance and care. In other words, it takes a lot of work. There's a huge cost associated with, and it's ongoing maintenance.
Absolutely. And I can speak with some authority because that's what I've done in my own life. And this is not at all to pat myself on the back or say I'm anything great. God knows how much I've failed, fallen into replicating dysfunction. But my story didn't end there.
That's right.
I chose and am actively choosing to embark on a journey of healing one of faith, one of seeking wisdom, continually trying to change things. I broke some curses, but it would be naive of me to think that I did it perfectly and now everything's great in our family. I strive on to continue to change, to continue to heal, to continue to grow in wisdom, faith, and understanding.
And you're absolutely right. We've got to experience that in our home. So the first thing that we can do is we can hide our children. And the cost and the effort, the ongoing maintenance that's required, I'm challenging us to commit to hiding with the attack that's coming on our family. Can we commit today as families to protecting, to hiding and protecting our children? But the truth is our children get older, right? And they go on. One day we're experiencing that now. Megan, she's off to college. And so eventually they do go out, and you can't always hide them from everything. So there does come a time when the second thing that she did is she began to nurture him. And if you think about it, it would not have done much good if Moses was only hidden. If all we do is hide our children for their entire life away from...
They didn't die. Yay.
Yeah, great. Oh, yeah, they didn't die. Sometimes it feels like that, like, we were successful today. Our kids didn't die. But no, the movement on behalf of his family is to nurture him, ensured that he would also go on to accomplish his purpose. And the purpose is not just for our children to make it safely through the world. No, God has a divine purpose and plan for our children. So in the same way, our job is to prepare our children for their purpose. And this requires nurturing. It's intentionality. It's care. We must be intentional, because not being intentional, listen to me, it's way too costly. We cannot afford to be haphazard in our care for our families. We must get it right. As some of you know, we volunteered to host an exchange student this last school year, Scott. And some of you had a chance to meet him. He's an incredible young man, and it's been a great experience. But when his parents were wanting him to learn the English language and learn what life is like, he's from Korea. They literally they sent him to the United States by himself. He's 17 years old, and they put him in what's called an immersion program. And I want to talk just for a few minutes about that. What nurturing looks like, immersing your kid. Let me just ask you this morning, what are you immersing your family in? Let's think about that. Is it healthy? Is it life-giving? Are you and your family immersed in God's words, God's ways, his teachings? I remember being 17 years old, freshly graduated from high school, and I went to take my first college course. 17, I got life figured out. I'm making my own paths, my own plans. The first college course I ever took was a sociology class. And I remember walking into that first night, and the first thing the professor says, he began to declare that through this sociology class, he was going to teach us that we are a product of our environment. That it's not just our own decisions that forge the future, but it's the people, the environments that we are in. And I think this is so true when it comes to nurturing our children. It's important that we are creating the right climate, the right environment, that we're nurturing the environment of our children. I think one of the greatest acts of nurturing, when it comes to nurturing our children, is infusing our faith into our children. And I mean like immersing them in faith.
And we can look at Moses' story. See, the act of hiding Moses for 3 months was an act of rebellion, but it was also an act of faith. One that gets them, in fact, mentioned in the heroes of faith.
Yeah.
If we look at Hebrews 11, it lists all the heroes of the faith. According to Hebrews, it says they were not afraid.
So good.
See, with human eyes, others could only see futility and danger that would condemn an entire family to death. But this family was different. It saw through the eyes of faith. And of course, God responded. We can take a look back into Exodus, and this is what the passage says. It says, "Take this baby and nurse him for me," the princess told the baby's mother after she finds him in the reeds. "I will pay you for your help." So the woman took her baby home and nursed him. So even after Pharaoh's daughter, she finds Moses in the reeds. Miriam, his sister, she intercedes and she has this arrangement. So she's so bold and brave, and she arranges to have Jochebed, Moses' mother, serve as Moses' wet nurse. And some scholars, they talk about in ancient times, children were known to be nursed for 3 or 4 years. Like, wow, okay, I can't even wrap my head around that before being weaned. But this was common. So Jochebed would have continued to have influenced Moses' life as he continued to grow up much longer than maybe we would think or imagine.
And I love how intentional she must have been We don't have a lot of historical reference for this, but we know in those pivotal years, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 years old, she infused this faith in him. And what we know is, I want to say this to parents, because sometimes you may think that these early years of your children are not that important, that they may not be learning much. But the truth is, these are the formidable years. And this faith that his parents were infusing, these bold acts of bravery. Now, let me just say this. That's what our families ought to look like. We ought to be leading our families in acts of bravery, leading our children on what faith looks like, and allow that faith to take root at an early age, so much so that even though he grows up in the house of the Pharaoh, he does not forget where he comes from, and he does not forget his faith. In fact, Hebrews says, by faith, Moses, when he had grown up, he refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose, watch this, to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. You know what that tells me? Moses was grounded and rooted in his faith. So I want to ask you today, how are you grounding yourself? How are you grounding your family in faith? I think about at the church, there's so many opportunities for people to take advantage. Here at Verve, we have small groups. We have our weekend services, our serve crews, where you can grow in faith and grow in community. I want to just challenge you. Don't miss these moments. Don't miss that small group. Don't miss out on the weekend. Make sure that you're here. Make sure your children are here. Make sure your children. We have kids environments every Sunday morning. And small groups for our youth on Friday nights. And it's environments. Man, we're talking about environments. We're creating environments where faith can be rooted in our children. So I want to challenge you. As a family, make faith a priority. When I was studying, I know I keep going back to these greenhouses, but I kind of geeked out on it. And when I was studying, I was like, what is the purpose of the greenhouse? And this is what it says. It says, to give your plants and seedlings the best chance. You should set your greenhouse up somewhere that gets lots of sunshine, plenty of natural daylight, and is protected from harsh winds and frost pockets. And I was thinking, if we want our seedlings, our children, to have the best chance, of success, then we should set our homes up somewhere, and I'm going to do a play on words here, but where it gets plenty of sunshine. And here's what I mean, that we're giving them plenty of exposure to Jesus, the Son. Not only is the light, he is the Son of God. And so you are looking for ways and opportunities. I love you're surrounding your family with people that are like-minded, that they're passionate about their faith, and you're putting other people, and you're creating an environment. You're exposing them to Jesus in every possible way. And I want you to know, this is what will give your family the best chance at success.
Yeah, and on that thought, I also want to point out that for Moses to achieve all he needed to achieve, his birth family was not going to be enough.
That's good.
Now, there were terrible circumstances, but God used them to place Moses in the palace where he had access to the finest of everything. This would include things like education, knowledge, wisdom. He also learned something else crucial that he could not have learned in his parents' home or among his people in that environment. He learned to think like a prince and a ruler and not as a slave.
That's so
and
good.
It's this coupling of his nurturing that he receives from both his biological family and his adoptive family that allows him to do a few things. One, boldly follow God, and then also be comfortable enough to confront Pharaoh, and then finally lead his people out of Egypt in a glorious display. So Acts goes on to highlight the role of Moses' adoptive mother and his Egyptian education. It says, when he was placed outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him and brought him up as her own son. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and in action. See, in the wisdom of God, Moses was placed into the care of his Egyptian adopted mother and was prepared to lead the people of Israel into one of the most monumental events in all of the Bible. And this is also the wisdom of God in placing you and your family in this church family. One family unit may not have everything needed or required for your children or for you to achieve your purpose, but together, that is possible. We need you and you need us. Together, we are stronger. Together, we are more complete.
So true. You know what they say? It takes a village.
True.
And God has given us our village. This is what the church, I want to encourage you that maybe I want to say this. Maybe you've been let down by your family. You talked earlier about dysfunctional families. But I want you to know that even in those terrible circumstances, just like Moses, that God had the plan. You know what the plan is? The plan is the church. This is what we say at Verve, we're a family. We're a community. And that is not to just say that we're perfect. The church is made up of imperfect, flawed people who may hurt you at some point. But can I tell you what? They're also the same people who can meet your needs for support, for wisdom, for faith, for love, and nurturing. And so I want to make appeal to every family today. Maybe you don't have a pattern for what a godly family looks like. Maybe you don't even have the support system around you. I believe that right now some of you are raising Moseses that God has anointed and planned and prepared to do mighty acts like Moses did. But you can't do that by yourself. You need the church. This is why when you're born again, you are born into a family. Family. And all the different pieces that are needed for what God wants to do with your children, they're found in the family of God. In fact, I would love in this moment as we're closing out today, I would love you, if you're here today and you're not a part of the family of God, I want to give you an opportunity right now to become a member of the family of God. And it's so simple. It starts with you receiving Jesus as Lord and Savior of your life. And so in just a moment, I'm going to ask our campus pastors to come, and I'm going to ask them to lead us in a prayer. And I want you to be thinking of two things. Number one, if you're here today, you're not a part of the family, and you want to join the family, we're going to give you that opportunity. And number two, I'm wondering what great acts of faith that right now God's calling us to lead our family in. And I wonder if today we would respond with the boldness and the bravery that Moses' parents did. That in the face of adversity, in the face of everything that's happening in society and this attack on family, I wonder if there's some bold parents that will stand with me today and say, I'm going to protect, I'm going to hide, and I'm going to nurture the family, the children that God's given me to ensure that they have the best chance of success. I hope you've enjoyed today, but I want to encourage you next week. We're continuing. We've got 3 more weeks where we're going to do our best to equip you to live out the God-ordained plan that He has for our family.